So good afternoon, Lisa, and welcome to Inspiring Courage podcast. I have the pleasure of having Lisa here. She's the founder of Gabriel's Wellbeing and Education. I'm so delighted you're here and I can't wait to speak to you.
I'm so excited as well. I love talking about things I'm passionate about, and Gabriel's Wellbeing is something I'm truly passionate about. So it's lovely to be here. Feels a real honour.
Not at all. It's my honor to have you here. So we were introduced by a mutual connection, and I think he was right. He said to me, "You're going to click with Lisa," and we had an hour-long call set up, and we just went beyond, didn't we? And we just couldn't stop talking. So we have an awful lot in common. And one of the things that we share is a passion of working with children, and especially at this particular moment in time when many are struggling with their mental health. We are more passionate even to kind of concentrate on that. So you are an ex-headmistress, am I right? That's your previous path. And now you are on a new journey. So what I would like to do is to invite you to take us through a little bit of where you come from, what your previous path was, and what prompted you to start going on this new path, which is your bigger vision, isn't it?
Lovely, thank you. So my path actually started probably from a very, very young age of just loving children, just being around children, always enjoyed being around children. So those early days of being a babysitter for friends' families. I then went on, and my first job when I was 17 was to be a nanny. I then went on and did my teaching degree, and sorry, the drilling. And then I loved being a teacher, really loved everything I did. And that was 30 years ago. I went on quite quickly from being a class teacher to being a deputy head teacher, then to heading up two of quite prominent nursery schools in Reading. There were only 5 nursery schools in Reading, and I was executive head teacher of both of those. And so early years is my passion. I think if you can get it right in early years, you can give children those wonderful foundations to be lifelong learners. So that's kind of my path, my journey. I did a little bit of tutoring for nursery nurses as well at a prestigious college called Chiltern College, just down the road here in Caversham. Did that for 5 years when my children were very young. So I've had a real variety of working with very little children all the way up to teenagers. And I suppose in my role as headship, I noticed that their children were coming to nursery school, having a wonderful experience, because obviously nursery is free flow and it's all about leading your own learning. They'd then go off to primary school, and even sometimes secondary. The parents would come back in touch with me and say, my child's just not happy. They're just not settling. They're not enjoying the rigidness, the structure, the formality of school. So that was when I kind of had this idea. I felt, how can I help these children that aren't actually in my nursery? So I started running wellbeing days in my school in the holidays, and families would come, they'd register their children. We'd have anything between 30 and 60 children, depending on how many volunteers we had to help. And they would come and have a wonderful time, and we would do things. We'd have a yoga room set up with this woman that does amazing children's yoga. We'd have a Lego area and a book area, loads of outdoor play, and we would always make a point of sitting around the fire at the end of the day, giving gratitude, what we've been so grateful for today, but also that opportunity of writing or drawing a picture, something to put in the fire that we wanted to kind of disperse off and get rid of as well.
I love that.
Yeah, I love that. Children, okay. and if we don't do it, they're saying, when are we sitting around the fire? They love that bit. Wow. And then we also sort of have hot chocolates and marshmallows, and different days we do different things, but it's like a little ritual to end our session. Wow. So alongside that, I also did some training 6 years ago in complementary therapy called pranic healing, which is helping people with, it's a non-touch energy healing. So you can help with aches, pains, any kind of physiological, but also psychological. I'm now an advanced pranic healer. So with my 30 years in teaching and my 6-7 years of pranic healing, I've got these amazing tools and strategies now that I can use to help children to help themselves, so that when they are feeling stressed, anxious, fearful, worried, that they can use these tools, tap into them, and they become lifelong tools that they can share with themselves, their friends, their families. One being the most simple thing of just deep belly breathing. We all know, we've read the articles that say if you breathe into your tummy, nice big breaths, and it's true. I mean, when I explain to the children that when we're nervous and we're anxious, we do deep, shallow breathing, because it stems back to our cavemen days, that fight or flight, there's something wrong, I need to get ready to run or to fight. And then I say, but if you actually tell your body, I'm fine, and just do those lovely deep breaths, And they do it for 2 minutes and they realize that actually that is building up strength and confidence and resilience. And that's actually why we chose the name Gabriel's, because Gabriel meaning, strength of God. We want to give children real strength so that they can be strong and resilient and able to face the world, really, because we all know this year the COVID pandemic has proved to us we have to show resilience. We need that in our toolbox to be able to make it through. And so if we can help children to have that, then I'll feel I've done the most amazing job. That's kind of my sole purpose, is to follow that path and help as many children as I can, and also to help their parents, their families, and their teachers. So it's kind of a multifaceted kind of umbrella that we can do at Gabriel's.
Yeah, I love everything that you do, and the fact that you're so experiential in how you teach children. And you're right in that when you bring that kind of sciencing to it a little bit, it helps them understand that there is a reason behind it. It's not just kind of mumbo jumbo, because, let's not be shy about it. People talk about mental well-being. They have talked about it for a number of years now. And when you talk about something too much, it almost kind of removes the importance a little bit, because it just becomes normal vocabulary that people throw about, but nobody actually thinks deeply about that, what this really means and how we can really implement this daily to our benefit, really. So it's only by experiential learning that they will actually accept it, because they see the difference that it makes there and then. It's kind of convincing them that it really does work. And one of the reasons we connected is, again, we have that in common. My friend and I, who run programs with families and educators, we are very experiential in what we do also, because it's by drawing, it's interesting what you said, that you encourage the children to sit down and draw and doodle and write whatever on resourceful thought that they have and put it in the fire, because it's kind of, that again is the benefit of journaling that everybody talks about, but nobody knows the science behind it. So it's kind of, not many do, not nobody, but not many people do. So by making it fun, we are trying to build that resilience. So I love the word resilience that you use. Again, it's thrown about quite a lot. Tell me what your take is on resilience. What do you exactly mean by resilience?
Yeah, when I say resilience, I guess really I start with myself. And I know when we chatted before, we talked about, so many of us have started from a traumatic starting point in our childhood. Life is tough for many, many people. And I kind of like to think of it a bit like that analogy of are you a dandelion or are you an orchid? And a dandelion is so incredibly resilient, because wherever you plant it, wherever, I found one on a pavement the other day and I was like, well, how has that grown? There is nothing here to help it grow. And children, if given just a little glimpse of hope, some little tools, some little tips, some ideas, and all the research that I've done around people who've thrived against the odds, it's always because there's been one little glimmer of hope. Somebody somewhere has shown them some kind of I suppose it is that light at the end of the tunnel, that ability that even if everyone else thinks you can't make it, somebody said, well, I believe in you. And what I really want to instill in children is, if they can see that from within their own heart, that they believe in themselves, even if their parents don't believe in them, or their family or their teachers or other people around them, that if they can really start seeing that from the things I'm saying and the things that our team is saying, that actually you can find that within yourself, that against all odds, in the worst case scenario, in the worst situations, you can make it through. There's always a light at the end of the tunnel. There's always, what's that expression about every cloud has a silver lining. And I do think, so I want them all to feel they're dandelions that can thrive, whatever's thrown at them. We're not foolish enough to think we can make this an ideal world. Wouldn't it be nice if we could? But that's not going to help us learn and grow. And part of being resilient is we do learn and grow. And it's that expression, I get knocked down, but I get up again. I get knocked down and I get up again. Because the more children and young people can understand that each time that happens, it's another learning experience. And that's fantastic. It gives you another tool and another skill. And then you can help others do it as well. So it's not just us teaching them, but us teaching them to help others around them too. So yes, that's kind of how I would see it, really.
Yeah, they learn by teaching, right? They say if you want to learn something, teach it. So by enabling them to accept it, own it, and then forward that learning to somebody else, they get that kind of empowerment also, that wow, I've helped somebody, and there are benefits to that, aren't there? When you help somebody, you get a dose of oxytocin, don't you? So again, I love how you describe resilience, because like you, that's, you know, that's what I believe, that it's the power of bounce back ability. It's, you know, accepting that you will fall, and how quickly can you get up, and also accepting to take pleasure in small things in life. For me, I think that's being resilient also, because, you know, the world that we are surrounded with at the moment, we don't have many of the liberties that we had before, but it's just about having the freedom to enjoy the little things that we could previously and still can, you know, loving our family, laughing with our family, dancing around the kitchen table and doing that mummy dances, you know, being told, "Mummy, don't be so uncool." You know, it's just kind of all the things that would kind of, you know, raise a smile almost, you know, make us jump out of that negative cycle. So it's interesting, actually. I did a talk for a group of entrepreneurs last week on how this year could be the best year of your life in spite of everything that's going on. And it's amazing that we sometimes need to hear it, because, you know, I didn't think they were my target audience particularly, because they're a bunch of really resilient and really kind of well-informed and motivated entrepreneurs. But I think it's good to kind of have it reinforced sometimes, because sometimes we kind of get drawn into that circle of, you know, especially with all the negativity that's going on out there. So I think resilience is something that is so valuable and can be taught in different perspectives. That not only it's how you get up, but it's also how you make the most of a bad situation, isn't it? And still thrive, as you said, because in an ideal world, everything would be shiny, and it's just never going to happen. And it's acceptance, isn't it? That's not going to happen all the time. So you see, this is how we talk all the time. We kind of, you know, or we have so many things that we share in common. So tell me, what's next for you guys? Where are you taking it? Because you said in a conversation we had that more and more parents are reaching out to you now and saying, as a result of what's happened, they've decided to homeschool their children. So I guess there's going to be a huge sector of the society where you're not going to see children going back to school to normal kind of education that's existed previously. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, and that actually links in so beautifully with what you just said about acceptance, because some of the families I've been working with they've been fighting this kind of, their child just really getting so stressed and anxious being in a school environment. So I was working with a number of families, and then the first lockdown happened, and they kind of said, "I can't believe it. My child's like a different child. I don't need you right now because my child's so happy learning and working from home." So I kind of thought, interesting. And obviously, I'm not great at remembering all statistics and things, but there's something like that in the south of England, the home education numbers have gone up something like 800% in the last 10 years. Wow. And I know how hard, if you're for me, working single mother, being a home educator was never an option for me. But I know I felt I was kind of pushing my children out somewhere that maybe wasn't ideal for them. I knew the kind of schools I'd worked in, and I knew the kind of school I'd like for my children. And I think, no disrespect to teachers, it's really not their fault. It's not even a head teacher's fault. They're getting so much pressure from government to reach targets, and it's all about targets and funding. And if your children make this level of progress, then you'll get your pay rise. And I mean, it's not how we should be teaching our children. And I think we're realizing that the great Ken Clark, who sadly died last year, he was amazing, and I loved his whole thinking around creative education, and that we are killing our children's creativity. And so we again, we do all our lovely outdoor work. We take children into the woods and we go searching, and we do tree we get little mirrors and get them looking into the mirror and looking up at the sky and just seeing the world from a different perspective, but also just loving nature and seeing all the detail and talking and sharing. And so from parents sort of saying, well, actually, we're not putting our children back into school. What can you help us with? What can you offer? So just before this lockdown we're currently in, we were running a lovely little toddler group in the morning where toddlers could come with their carers and have a couple of hours out in nature. We then had a home education group where they'd come for a couple of hours in the afternoon, again, lovely out in nature, learning through nature. And then we had an after school club. Hopefully very soon we can, get those started again. So those kind of things, if we can do that more regularly. Currently we're renting a local scout hut, which is fantastic. It's got a beautiful woodland area, it's got an amazing fire pit area, it's got everything we could wish for, but it's not ours, and they need it for the evenings and the weekends. So we are desperately hoping we can find an amazing benefactor funder, somebody who can start us to be able to have site of our own that we can have, and with a substantial amount of land or garden that we could use as our wild area, and therefore have a school. And it will work slightly differently to what we call a school. In fact, we've toyed with whether it should even be called a school, because actually the word school does conjure up desks and teacher at the front, and that's not what we mean. What we mean is a space where you can come and have kind of areas of learning, probably a bit like a nursery school runs, really, that you might have your music learning room and your science area and your art area and your maths, English, science, because obviously all those things have to happen too, but things where we can offer guidance, but children can do all their experiential learning, and maybe have some coaching from someone who is a music specialist who can guide them along the way, because that might be something their parents can't help them with. There are certain things parents at home are comfortable with helping with, and other things they're not. And we kind of thought, well, maybe that's where we can come in and fill in the gaps or work with parents, but just to learn in a different way, so that children can kind of come and use our hub, I guess you could call it, to tap into the experts in their field. And it is about, if a child learns from their interests, if they start with learning from their interests, their learning absolutely rockets. They really do make rapid and sustained progress, because they're learning what they want to learn about. And I always kind of link this to a bit like when we choose to go to university and we choose the subject we want to study, our learning's shoots because it's something we've chosen. Whereas when you're in school and you're told, oh, we're not doing the Vikings till this term next year or whatever, or you know, something that they're really passionate about and want to learn about, children are in the here and now. They don't want to have to wait a year or 2 years till they learn that subject. And I think that's where the national curriculum is very restrictive, and it just feels a shame. You're losing a missed opportunity. So yeah, we want to do much more kind of starting from the child, their interests, because actually once they meet their own needs and interests, then they want to start learning about everything else. Once you're a lifelong learner, you then get that fascination with, oh, I keep hearing about this, I want to know a bit more about that. And that's what we want to grow. Children who see themselves as learners right from very young and can see that they have control over what they want to learn about as well.
I love that, learners. So that's one word that I'm really passionate about. It's about learning constantly throughout life. And I feel that the way the education system is and has been, I mean, I'm Iranian and I was educated in Iran until I was 16, and I came here, and actually education here was way easier than it was in Iran. Wow. It was like, you know, being on holiday constantly compared to how we studied in Iran, which was brutal. And one thing that does is kills the passion of reading in children and learning and developing. And you kind of think when you're at a school, then your learning is done. When you go to school, you go to college, you go to uni, you get the vocation. That's whether, you know, if you're lucky enough, it's your choice. If you're not lucky, it's a path that you've just fallen into. But then when that's done, you kind of fall into the habit of living, and then you forget about learning. But learning doesn't finish at school or at uni, does it? It just carries on. And what I'm talking about really is that kind of element of personal development, is kind of learning to be better versions of ourselves constantly. And that's something that many don't do, because the love of learning has actually been killed in them. And that's what I learned. And if we can kind of build that ethos of following your intuition, following your heart, following what you really love and learning in that, then we're making a generation that will know their path as adults. We are, creating fulfilled adults, because if they've always learned what they've always loved, they're going to fall into career paths that are really congruent with their lifestyle and what they love. Again, they'll be very good at it. And that's where fulfillment comes in, rather than success, how we define it, kind of going up in the career ladder and ticking boxes and still feeling unfulfilled, no matter how many boxes we tick. So I guess that's why it's so important to invest in our children and get them to understand what they love, what their passion is, and following that and encouraging that in them, rather than driving them in a path that may not be their own. And that's something that I'm really, truly passionate about. And I think there's a huge gap. So well done to you for recognizing it. And, maybe in the future we'll even get to work together, because I think we have, such a lot of alignment in what we do. So it's lovely to talk to you, Lisa. We could talk to you, and I'd love to bring you back later on when we are free to go back to seeing each other again and see how things have changed and moved on for you, because I'm sure that there'll be many more opportunities for you to actually extend the programs that you offer to different age children. So watch the space, right?
Yes, absolutely. And I think, like you said, we could talk forever. I feel I've made a lifelong friend, and I've only known you, a week. It's amazing, because we are so in tune with what we believe, what we feel for young children, and helping them to, have that confidence and that ability to see themselves as whatever they want to be, and actually we know this next generation of children are going to be doing jobs that haven't even been invented yet. We know that they need to have that flexibility to go from this to that. Look at people in the COVID. The ones that have really survived have been the ones that have been able to think out of the box and do something really different. It's so many. A friend of mine, sorry, I'll just quickly end on this, because it was lovely. We were talking on Zoom, and she said, my daughter set up her own little business making little rabbit biscuits. Now, who would have thought that, to go away, find some little recipes, make these little rabbit biscuits? She's now got her own little business, and I think, I can't remember how old she is, 14, 15. How amazing is that? She started with her passion and her interest, because she has a rabbit and she loves her rabbit, and therefore she's now got her own little business. I think, that's fantastic. If we can instill that in any of our young people, we've done a great job, haven't we?
Yeah, I agree. It is about finding your ikigai. That's what your ikigai is. That's what ikigai is finding what your passion is, what you're good at, and what is going to be an opportunity to earn for you, what the world needs. So if you find all of those, then you found your ikigai. And what better way of doing it than by experimenting? And, I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've jumped from one to another field. And it's not, people say, how do you feel about it? I'm like, I don't know. I don't feel I've failed in any way, shape or form, really, because every single kind of role that I've adopted in a way has opened the door for the next one. So it's again, being open to opportunities and understanding that each stepping stone is, leading you towards what you really want to have and to love. So it's being open, isn't it? And being acceptable and flexible. Flexibility, as you said rightly, those with the most amount of flexibility manage to thrive during this time. So it's one of the things that we need to again instill in the children. Thank you so much, Lisa. I've so enjoyed talking with you, and I'm positive that we will bring you back again to get your take on how parents have embraced what you do, and more of them are sending their children to your beautiful establishment. And before long, you'll have a place of your own, I'm positive.
Yes. Thank you. It's been an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Thank you.
And you. Take care, my darling.